Hi everyone. This video is a short video about the diaphragm, what it is, where it is, and what it does. And a little bit of what can get in the way of it functioning properly. So, when we speak of the diaphragm in everyday language, we always mean one specific diaphragm in the body. We have more than that one, and anatomically, the diaphragm that is spoken about in everyday language is actually called the thoracic diaphragm. So the diaphragm that's in the thorax. In German, it's pretty easy because it's called the Zwerchfell. But it's a specific diaphragm in the body. And I'm showing you already with my hand pretty much where it's located. Yeah, it's located as a 3D dome muscle with a very big fascia component and a lot of fascia attachments to bones, the bottom of our sternum, the last two ribs, those floating ribs that are inside of the body, and then a few vertebrae here that are part of the middle of the spine, the thoracic spine, and the top of your lower spine, the lumbar spine. All right, so I said it's a dome, and it's a dome-shaped muscle, that is right, but it's not a complete curve like a dome, and I need my hat to show you what it actually looks like. So if we forget the rim, the diaphragm actually looks like the top of my hat. It has two mini domes on top of a big one. And this is exactly how my diaphragm is, right about this height. And actually the left little dome is a little lower than the right one, because on the left side I have not only lung, but I have a lung, a heart, and then the surrounding structure, the pericardium. And the diaphragm attaches at the bottom of the sternum, also known as the breastbone. So find your breastbone and go to the bottom of it, which is roughly between your nipples, and then suddenly it starts to go out like this, because the sternum then goes into the ribs and the ribs branch out and down. So the diaphragm attaches at its highest point here at the bottom of the sternum, and then in the front it doesn't have a lot of attachments. It's kind of much more free, which is why there's more movement in the diaphragm in the front. That's why the belly pushes out on the inhale, because the diaphragm can move into this front more. But it also attaches down and out to the sides. So find the waist, die Taille. And if you use your thumbs to press a little bit inside of your waist, you'll feel, there are the ribs that are attached all the way through in the bottom, and then at top, and in the back. But they're also like two little kind of ribs that don't seem to be attached in the front. And that's right, they are the floating ribs. So the last of our 12 ribs, the 11th and 12th, are floating ribs. And they're floating because they're attached in the back, but they're not attached in the front, so they can move more. And the diaphragm attaches to them. And it attaches to them because it needs to be able to move in the front, it needs to be able to move into the sides. And if those two ribs were attached in the front, there wouldn't be a lot of movement possible. So the diaphragm then attaches to those last two floating ribs that can move out and in more freely. And then it attaches in to the back of those ribs all the way into the spine. Yeah, those kind of four vertebrae. So the last thoracic vertebrae, das letzte Wirbelkörper der Brustwirbel, and the top three lumbar vertebrae. And when you know this, you understand why when you really feel relaxed and your breath is slow and full, generous, why there's so much more movement in the body. And so now we're going to try and really understand the movement of the diaphragm and feel the effects of that movement. So put your thumbs together and let the rest of the fingers kind of point forward. And put them at bra strap height. Yeah, roughly that highest point of the diaphragm when it's relaxed. When we breathe in, the diaphragm actually contracts. It contracts down and it widens. So it pushes all of the organs underneath, stomach, liver, gallbladder, spleen, kidneys, all the colons, down and a little bit out. And it pushes the floating ribs out to the sides. And it pushes the muscles, the fascia, the skin, the vertebrae here in the back. So when we're really relaxed, we have a full breath, the belly goes round, the ribs at the bottom get a little wider, and the kind of bottom to middle of our spine gets longer and wider. And then when we exhale, those hands slide back up and get round again, the elbows get closer, because the diaphragm relaxes, gets narrower, but it gets rounder and higher. So inhale. The belly rounds pushed by the organs that are pushed by the contraction of the diaphragm. The ribs are pushed out. The waist gets a little bit less kind of curvy. That lower to middle spine gets broader, less curvy. And then on the exhale, the diaphragm relaxes. Gets more narrow, the ribs, floating ribs go back in, and the diaphragm gets round and moves up. Yeah, so inhale, contraction pushing down, out to the back. Exhale, relaxing, narrowing, rounding. Also, try to breathe slowly, but in a pleasant way, allowing the belly to expand, allowing the ribs to expand. And see if you feel the pressure down, out, down, sideways, and down, back a bit. And some days it takes longer to feel it, and that's fine. But when you feel it, you realize that the movement of the diaphragm, this contraction and relaxation, is actually super important to help you stay up, to stabilize you, and to give you strength. Yeah, so the movements of the diaphragm are actually big contributors to our stability and our strength, the strength and stability of our upper body, but overall of our spine also. And that's why actually keeping the belly in all the time creates an obstacle, or the belly button in and up, creates an obstacle to the movement of the diaphragm. And that obstacle to the movement of the diaphragm means that the pressure down, out, back decreases. And this pressure that grows on the inhale inside of your abdominal cavity, so inside of your belly, is important for your core stability, for your core strength. You might want to have a little bit of muscle engaged here in the front, pushing a little bit against that pressure created by the diaphragm, but only a little bit. Otherwise, this internal support that naturally is provided by your diaphragm and all of the fascia around the diaphragm that have these ability to create this tensegrity, this combination of tension through many elements, which means that they are in a stable relationship towards one another, that they are more adaptable, but also more resistant to damage, decreases if the diaphragm doesn't move quite so freely. The movement of the diaphragm on the inhale creates an increased, greater pressure down here, but up here it creates a depression, like a lack of pressure, and that creates a suction, and that helps us breathe in, that helps the lungs fill up. And whereas at some point the pressure here becomes too much and it pushes the diaphragm back up, the fibers of the muscle and the fascia will also help the diaphragm relax and move back up. And then that pushes the air out. Then that increases the pressure here and pushes the air out. So you see that the movements, the natural movements of the diaphragm are important to give us strength, stability here, and to help with our breathing. Now, to make the breathing more natural, more easeful and fuller. But the other thing that the movements of the diaphragm and those pressures do are keeping the organs, lungs, heart, pericardium, and all of the organs below that I mentioned earlier on, it keeps them healthy. Because the movements of the diaphragm creates a pressing and then a releasing of these organs at different points in time. A pressing on the inhale of the organs below, a releasing of the organs on top, and on the exhale, a release of the organs at the bottom, a pressure on the organs on top. And that works like a massage. And that massage is important to help those organs release toxins, get more blood flow, have their natural pulse and keep their natural pulse. Now this congruent rhythm of the organs that we've spoken about. And it just keeps the tissues of those organs healthy, strong. Remember that most tissues need to have like a healthy tone, which means they need to be able to contract and relax. Contract, relax, contract, relax. And the movement of the diaphragm helps them with all of those things. So the diaphragm is wonderful for our breath. It's wonderful for our stability. It's wonderful for the health of our organs. And all of those things contribute to a healthy state of the nervous system, which means a healthy emotional and mental state, physical state, of course. But issues at those three things, the kind of stability, the health of our organs, whether our breath is short or long, are also indicators of imbalances in the nervous system. And again, imbalance in the nervous system can be a purely physical symptom. It could be a physical symptom of an emotional or a mental issue. So the diaphragm is a very important aspect to consider and a very important tool to work with for psychosomatic health, for the health both of your body, your mind and emotions as a continuous experience of who you are. And things that negatively impact your diaphragm are posture. This posture creates tension here, and so everything contracts. Less movement of the diaphragm here, less movement of the diaphragm here and in front because everything's shorter. Stress, shock, and more extreme forms of that will also impact your diaphragm. But the good news is, because everything is connected in the body, because everything is a beautiful interconnected cycle, as we've seen with the fascia model, with the TCM module, you have more than one way to approach a situation and to try and create change. So if one way doesn't seem to work, if you've tried for a while, then try another approach. You can try with breathing. You can try with movement. You can try with checking in what kinds of thoughts are going on in your mind. You can try with seeking situations that create positive, pleasant emotions. All of those things are possible. You can work physically, you can work emotionally, you can work mentally. And because we are a wonderful kind of domino game of all of those elements, they will affect each other. I hope this was helpful. If you have a little bit of time, you could try and think which fascia lines are directly connected to the diaphragm, which fascia lines will have very close relationship to the diaphragm. And so that will help you understand, these are the lines I might want to work with. And that means these are the movements that might be helpful, or the directions in which I want to move. And it means you also know that the diaphragm can affect various organs. And that might be informative for you if you're more interested in the TCM approach and you want to work with the health of specific organs in order to balance certain elements in the body. All right, have fun with it now. It's all yours, that knowledge. Take it and enjoy it most of all. Feeling where the diaphragm is, feeling the movements of the diaphragm and how it moves various parts of your body is something that you can also play around with. Take good care.